Hello, welcome to the Indianapolis Stars Colts Cover-2 podcast. I'm Colts editor Nat Newell here, of course, with our insider Joel A. Erickson. I do know his name, believe it or not.
It's not. The A is not for Alexander either.
No, it's not. It's not. So we're off to a good start. So please, why wouldn't you want to like and subscribe what you've listened to so far? And please do that on YouTube to help us stay in business. Joel, we will start off with one of the great, statistics of the NFL, which is a team's chance of making the playoffs if they start 2-0 versus any other record. The numbers are, which I sent to you, but I did look up. They make if you start 2-0, of course, I did not give you the percentages, so I have to look in the other spot. There are 42 teams since they switched to the 14-team playoff that have made the play. Started 2-0. 33 of those 42 teams have made the playoffs. So that's 79%. 75 teams have gone 1-0, 1-1. 42.7 of those have made the playoffs. And then 43 teams have gone 0-3. Only 5 of them have made it. That's 11%. There is, of course, as every Colts fan knows, some ties involved there. I'm not going to look up the ties because there's only 2 teams. So do you buy it that this is super important in terms of being 2-0 if you want to make the playoffs?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing we haven't talked about much in Indianapolis for a while because they never start 2-0. It's not like possible for them to start, or at least it wasn't until this year. It wasn't possible. We're usually Zaire Franklin. I'll actually reference this today. Zaire Franklin actually referenced this today where he said, normally we're telling you that 0-1 doesn't matter, and also we have to take the same thing and go 1-0 doesn't matter, but it kind of does. It kind of does because the downside of this game too isn't as significant. I think the other thing is the upside is significant, and when they played the Broncos last year, it was kind of whichever team wins this game is in the driver's seat for the final AFC playoff spot. Whoever wins the game this year, it's not that cut and dry. It's not that cut and dry where it's you still have to play the rest of the season. I mean, most Colts fans remember 2019 where they were 5-2 and didn't make the playoffs. But it also with whoever wins this game, you're in a much better position heading forward. And if you look at the rest of the Colts schedule, this is one of the harder games in their first half of the season. So yeah, I think it's a big game for a week 2 game. It's a big game for a week 2 game, more because of the opportunity though than the possible downfall if you lose.
Yeah, can you guess the last time the Colts started 2-0?
I know this because one of the other reporters asked somebody about this. It's 2009.
Yes. So as based on the math, if the Colts win this game, they will start 14-0 because that's what they did. And that'll be a heck of a season. I do think there is something to it in that. I mean, you could get the schedule so you're playing 2 terrible teams, beat them both, and then not be a very good team and make the playoffs. I don't think that's the case here. I think Miami certainly could be terrible. I don't think Denver is. I think the odds of getting 2 terrible teams right off the bat it's probably low for most NFL teams. So I do think starting 2-0 means that you beat somebody, at least one team, maybe 2, and is meaningful. So I think the math follows what the numbers say.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is so much of I think the question marks about this Colts team, and this will get to one of the first questions that we've gotten on this thing. It was actually sent to me on the social media account X. Is basically was what we saw in week 1 real? Joel S. It's Joel S. not Joel A. So it wasn't me. Asked me, week 1 had a lot of positives. Which ones do you think are more likely to carry over to week 2 and beyond? And which are you more skeptical of? That's the crux of the question is, which one of these teams is more likely? Which one of these teams is, or what's more likely is that this team is is as good as they looked, or that there's going to be some stuff that doesn't pan over. So That's kind of a big question. What's going to pan out from last week? I I really don't know. I'm not sure what stuff is going to carry over. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to look that good the whole season. I but it would be hard to say anything that happened in the first week is going to look that good. You know, the defense isn't going to look that good. Like none of it's really going to look that good the whole season. I think some of the more sustainable stuff, though, and maybe this is the first one that jumps to mind, is this offensive line has a chance to be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I saw one tweet of somebody who I can't remember who it was now, of course, but somebody who actually studies the stuff, talking about especially the pass blocking for the offensive line was good, which is good to hear. I mean, obviously we had the prior Pinter season where they just shoved guys in there. I don't think it was quite a fair comparison in that Bortolini had clearly proved, whether he was going to be great or not, who knows? But he was at the minimum, a capable center. And then Gonsalves, we didn't know if he could play guard or not. I think that's a little bit more legitimate. But they look good. Again, you'd like to see him maybe the run game look a little better, but there's a lot that goes into that. And that's really kind of, given how good the passing game looked, to complain about the run game, and that seems maybe a little unfair in the big picture.
Well, I think one of the other things about the offensive line that's encouraging is just how much Miami blitzed. I'm going to have more on this later in the week, but Miami blitzed 51% of the time, according to Pro Football Reference, and blitzed far more than any other team in week one. Now, Jim Bob Cooter was saying that sometimes blitz numbers, like sometimes it's almost easier against the teams are going to blitz, but Miami sent a lot of different things. The other thing that Jim Bob said was that last year when they played the Dolphins, there were a couple of things that they made mistakes on, and that they didn't want to make those mistakes again. So it's not necessarily a given that you're going to pick up all those blitzes, especially with a first-year starter at center and a guy playing guard for the first time. During the preseason, I think some of the stuff that was concerning with Gonsalves was identifying and picking up rushers as they do stuff. So, yeah, I was encouraged by that, and it's going to matter a lot this week against Denver, this offensive line picking up blitzes, because Denver is going to bring some pressure. I think they were 7th last year in the NFL in terms of highest blitz rate.
And you mentioned Jones. I'm not, is he going to be that good? No, he's not going to be that good, because almost no one's that good week after week. I'm still in the camp of we have a lot of information on Jones, and most of it's not good. The one data point we have from this season is very good. I am still skeptical. But even if he is, I don't know, 75% between what he was in New York and what he was Sunday, I think that's a win for the Colts. But again, everybody wants you to say, oh, this is definitely it. I'm not going to do that after week one, and I'm not going to do that for Daniel Jones. But, again, happy to be wrong. If he turns out to be great, that's good for us, good for him, good for the Colts. I'll be happy to be wrong, but I'm not a believer yet. But after this, if he does it again this week, or even something close to it this week against Denver, you kind of got to take it at face value at that point.
I think there's a lot of reaction to some of the stuff that you write after the first game. Like I know that in the press box we were talking about, like, I don't necessarily know that I think this is real in any way, shape, or form, but at the same time, it's all we have. It's all we've seen so far. And I think some of that applies to Jones as well, just not necessarily feeling like, I don't think I'm not expecting him to, again, like he's just not going to be that good. Like he's not going to complete. That would be an NFL record if he completed 76% of his passes for the entire season. And also, he's at 9.4 yards per attempt or something like that.
That's 3 yards higher than he's ever done before.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I do think though that some of the things that he did, and this is what I wrote on Sunday. I some people blew it out of proportion in terms of like what we were saying, but some of the things that he did, I think, are replicable, and part of the reason that they chose him, they were much better in protection in terms of picking up the blitz. Now, I think when teams actually do get pressure on him, I think it's not going to be the same as Richardson, who was good at getting himself out of stuff. But we talked a lot about how, he would use his elusiveness to get out of stuff, but that they didn't necessarily pick up blitzes very well when he was there. It seemed like Jones did a better job of identifying that stuff. I talked today. That stuff is Tony Sperano Jr. driven. He handles the blitz, how to do it, what rules to get in case you see something you don't know. Jones is also partially responsible for it. Tanner Bortolini's responsible for it. All those guys work together. I do think that they're probably going to do a better job of identification on some of that stuff. I think maybe one of the other things that sticks out is there was just going to be more completed passes. Now, does that, like we just alluded to, I don't think they're going to be for 9.4 yards per attempt, but there's going to be more completed passes. And that, I think the other thing that carries over is I think it's probably going to be a more even time of possession this year than it was last year when they were a full 5 minutes in the deficit in terms of time of possession versus their opponent, which, I don't think it's the be all end all, but it certainly doesn't help the defense to leave them on the field the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, Jones was sacked once on Sunday. He only had 2 starts last year where he was sacked once, or he didn't. It was one was the minimum that he gave. Was sacked. The year before that, 2023, he was sacked multiple times in all 6 of his appearances. He actually had a couple good games at the end of 2022 without getting sacked. But and again, a lot of people want to talk about how bad the Giants' offensive line is, which it certainly was. But most of the research says that quarterbacks are more responsible for their sack rate than the offensive line is. So that'll be interesting to watch. I'm not saying it isn't a real thing that he's not going to get sacked, but he's had problems with sacks his entire career, and it'll be interesting to see how that, especially against the Denver team. That now again, what the strength of Miami was, it's supposed to be its defense. So I don't want to I'm the offense for Miami looked awful. So I'm willing to somewhat to acknowledge that. But the defense was supposed to be pretty good. I think the offense deserves a little bit of credit for that.
The other thing is why sacks do tend to be on the quarterback, but how you get to why you're sacked, I think does matter. Like I said with Richardson, Richardson was good at avoiding sacks, but from what we saw from him his first 2 years, it wasn't because he was good at getting stuff picked up. It was because once someone was in the backfield, he's good at evading it or creating incompletions. I know at one point last year we were asking, what do you do to turn those plays where you evade a sack into something positive and not just an incompletion that leaves you behind the sticks or 2nd and 10 or whatever. With Jones, I think that there's probably we're gonna see some issue with when guys do get through, because that's the thing is that Dolphins did not really get through very often the other day. I don't think he's going to be as elusive as Richardson in the pocket. When he makes plays on the move, it's more straight line speed. That's I think where I think the other thing is he's not going to take as many chances with the football to avoid a sack as another quarterback. I don't necessarily think that applies to Richardson, but there are some quarterbacks who avoid sacks by just kind of letting the ball go and maybe putting it in harm's way. Jones, I think, is more likely to take the sack. But that's stuff that's after they're already in. So, I think that the thing is yes, it's on the quarterback because offensive linemen are going to get beat, and you either have to evade that or get the ball out of your hands. That's why I care so much about time to throw, because some quarterbacks throw really, really early, and that helps them avoid sacks. At the same time, why a guy takes a lot of sacks, I think, is interesting. And so if having a better offensive line means there's fewer rushers in Jones' face, maybe he takes fewer sacks because, it plays to what he's good at and not what he's bad at.
Yeah, I mean, in general, there's 2 types of quarterbacks, those who throw interceptions and those who take sacks. The great ones do neither, but in general, that's what it is. And Jones is a guy who takes sacks. I'm not saying one. I guess I would rather have my guy throw interceptions so he's not getting beat up. But Jones does not throw a ton of interceptions. I mean, that's one of the things he's always been very good at. The next item on our list in terms of whether we think it's real is Tyler Warren. I was in our Sunday podcast. To say I was anti Tyler Warren. Maybe I was. I wasn't trying to be, but I just don't. Rookie tight ends. It's just a really hard position to adapt to. They clearly were. They clearly. It's sure. Well, sure seemed like they came out and said, "Let's get Tyler Warren a few passes right off the bat." Our team's going to adjust to that. Is he going to be? I don't think he's going to be that good the whole season, but there's a lot of people who think he's the guy. He's the answer, and he certainly might be. Where are you at on Tyler Warren after one game?
I think that he's going to be a focal point of the offense. I think we saw it in training camp. I think they've been planning to make Tyler Warren a focal point of the offense, whether that means 7 catches for 76 yards as teams, start to, address him that way, and expect him to be a focal point of the offense. I don't know, but I just think they're going to find ways to get him the ball. We saw 1 carry from him the other day. I think we could see more going forward. I think the other thing is stuff like screens, shorter throws, just stuff that's, defenses are likely to give up. A lot of defenses are likely to give up that shorter throw. The way he runs after the catch, I think the Colts are going to do some of that stuff as well. So I don't know what it means for his numbers. I don't think he's, chasing Brock Bowers for most catches by a rookie tight end or something like that. But I do think that they see him as a focal point of the offense.
I also think it's worth noting, we talked about this a little Sunday, but Pittman had a great game, didn't get a lot of attention. But so you had 2 receivers who were really productive. And we know Pierce, Downs, they got other guys. Mitchell looked good. We'll get to him a little bit later. But I mean, it's not like they had to rely on Warren either. If the defense wants to take him away, something else is going to open up.
Yeah. They have other guys who can, they talked a lot when they got him, and before that with the tight end position about giving Shane Steichen more people over the middle of the field. But they still have some people, who can make plays over the middle of the field. I think having Tyler Warren probably lessens Josh Downs. But if they're shifting everything towards Tyler Warren, and you've got Josh Downs in one-on-ones, and you still want those short over the middle throws, that's what Downs has done in the past. Michael Pittman is another guy who can work over the middle in the short intermediate type stuff. It feels like they have enough weapons. They don't have a Jamar Chase, but there's maybe 5 of those guys in the NFL. And it just feels like they have enough guys that do different things that they're going to be able to find some answers, at least for what defenses do to take certain people away. I think the larger question is, how successful is Jones at playing like he did last week over and over again?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost, do they have someone you feel like you need to take away? Again, not to take anything. I mean, Pittman's a fine receiver. Looks like Warren could be a good player. But do they have someone that you, as a defense, you're going to say, we have to take this guy away? And does that work in their favor where that, that's really not – I mean, you just take – especially with Jones and Steichen doing what they do you just take what's there and, you don't care what the defense is doing in terms of taking someone away?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that sticks out to me about Sunday is that, when a quarterback runs the offense that Shane Steichen has put together, the game plan that he's put together, we've seen it be pretty good. He's pretty good at finding weaknesses in opposing defenses. That's how Gardner Minshew had probably his best season with the Colts, 2 years ago, was just essentially just taking advantage of the stuff Shane Steichen found in the opposing defense. I don't necessarily know that Anthony Richardson's always been able to take advantage of that stuff. I think that's why he's not the starter. And so, I think that's one thing that's going to be interesting to watch and carry over is it seems like Jones is better capable of realizing Steichen's vision for a game. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah.
Now all that stuff is dependent on, can they block somebody? We're going to find out some stuff with Denver coming up that they have, the Miami Dolphins have a lot of guys that you've heard of rushing the passer, but none of them have ever really fully come into their own. Nick Benito is an absolute war daddy edge rusher. It's different blocking him than it is that blocking Bradley Chubb, even though Bradley Chubb was taken in the top 10. You know, you're gonna find some stuff out against Denver this week. Whether or not they can do this against everybody, or they're going to struggle with some of the best players in the game, like most teams do. But yeah, I think one of the other takeaways from last week is just Shane Steichen can and will give a quarterback opportunities to take advantage of a defense. It's just whether or not they can do it.
All right. How about Spencer Schrader? You buying that they have a field goal kicker who will never miss a kick this season?
I think this is actually your point that I'm going to get to make, but for the most part, kickers are like relief pitchers. They're very volatile. You can have a really good season one year, or you can have a stretch of like 3 or 4 good years, and then the next thing you know, you're Devin Williams and you blow up every time you touch the ball for the Yankees. You know, Matt Gay was kind of like that. Matt Gay was really, really consistent in Los Angeles. Had some injuries here, didn't look consistent again. The Vinatieri's and the guys and the Justin Tuckers before this year, notwithstanding the off the field stuff, like the guys who are able to kick well for 10 plus years or kick like you expect them to for 10 plus years is actually pretty few and far between. So I think with Spencer Schrader, it's his first year kicking. You're always going to be kind of waiting and wondering, like, is he going to have what? Is he going? What's he do when he slumps? What's he do when he misses? Does he overcorrect next time? Does it lead to a slump, or is it just a miss and then he moves on? So Spencer Schrader, good first start. I think last year what you saw from him is interesting, especially just going to different places and making kicks. Can you count on it? I don't know. We'll find out.
That was exactly going to be my point, that the sample size for kickers is very weird. I guess the other point I would make is that I think kicker is also an odd position in that, like, as you mentioned, the number of guys who are truly elite, like you can actually count on, is really small. So those guys are really valuable. But I also think there's probably a much wider spectrum of good enough kickers. And it's just like, and it's like you say, is this going to be the year he's good enough, and is he not going to have a mistake or a slip up or whatever? Or is he, and I mean, for all we know, maybe he is the next Justin Tucker, sans the off-field stuff. Let's hope. But you know, he could be. But the other thing is, you know, are you fine with a guy who's going to make all the kicks less than 50 yards and some of the kicks over 50 yards? There's nothing wrong with that. You can live with that in the NFL. You find someone better, great. But you know, heck, even Chase McLaughlin, who was that kicker for the Colts, has gone on and been very good after they cut him because he couldn't make deep kicks, and now he makes deep kicks. That's just the nature of kicking, and you know, it's I think kickers get a little bit of a bad rap, but it is just because it's a volatile position in terms of year to year. There aren't enough kicks to know how good someone actually is as a kicker, and you have to do it over several years. And that's just a whole weird thing to figure out as a football team.
Yeah, the other thing I think is what you mentioned, the 50-yarders. He didn't have a 50-something yarder
right
in this. And if you watched games last week, none of them are jumping. Chris Boswell, I think, kicked a 60-yarder to win it. Is that right?
Yeah, serial killer.
What a quote.
Yeah, it's a great quote. I'm not sure it's appropriate, but it is a great quote.
I saw somebody on social media responded to that with, well, if that's true, then he should probably be arrested and go to trial if he's a serial killer, and the Steelers know. And then, it's, you know, I mean, extending that, the Steelers, if they know about it, they're fine with that. They should probably be prosecuted as well.
Yeah. I also I like it better than silent assassin, because my question is, have you ever heard of a loud assassin? A loud assassin would not be an assassin. I don't know what. So I don't really think.
You can have a loud assassin. You can absolutely have a loud assassin.
Who's a loud assassin?
What?
Who's a loud assassin?
The ones that got caught like immediately. Like, who's the guy who killed the Archduke of for the start World War One?
I mean, I guess
that's
so.
Assassination.
That's someone who's like going out to just take someone out, a period, and they don't care about anything else.
By definition, that's an assassin.
Which I guess is an assassin, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I still like one of the all-time great Bill James, the baseball statistician, lines was, something was as hard as trying to kill a squirrel with a lawnmower. I will never forget that. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I thought that was a great line. All right.
That would be difficult. That would be very difficult.
Yes, yeah. We'll switch to defense. Before we do that, we will answer our question from Rambo25, which is how concerned are you about the possibility of not having a Charvarius Ward for the Denver game?
A lot. A lot. He's the number one outside corner. He's the true cover guy, I think, in this secondary. You went and paid him $18 million a year for a reason. He's supposed to be the guy. I will say this. I think the matchups, if Lou Anarumo wants to play, matchups, I think that there's a way that it gets done. Like Cortland Sutton, their best receiver is not necessarily a speed guy. He's more of a big physical type guy. I think that's probably an Xavier Howard type matchup if Charvarius Ward can't go. And then the other two guys, Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims, are speedier, and we learned from Lou Anarumo that that's what they like from Mekhi Blackman is his speed. They use it in more targeted spots though. Last week he didn't have to play a full game's worth of snaps, so I think that probably over the course of an entire game, some of Blackman's like what they like about Blackman is mitigated a little bit by some of the other stuff that they're doing. But the other thing is those guys are speed guys. They match up with speed guys. I think this maybe more than last week can be more of a matchup game, because the thing about last week is Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they're both really, really good, but they're also kind of the same type of receiver, like super fast, change of direction, not the biggest guy. This is one that's more, I think, personnel matchup. And they have guys to do that, but I would absolutely rather have Charvarius Ward on the field. You have to. That's supposed to be the difference-making type of player. Not having him inherently, I think, is a problem.
Continuing on the defense, you're interested in the blitz rate by the Colts, something we haven't seen them do much of anything under Eberflus and Bradley. I think you've noted they don't do it as much as you might think under Anarumo, but what are your thoughts on the blitz rate and whether that's going to be? Are we going to continue to see it, the pass rush, be as good as it was because of his ability to blitz at the right time?
I was going to say, I think the thing that stuck out to me on Sunday was the timing of the blitzes they called and how many different places it was coming from. I think with previous staffs, it felt like when they blitzed, it was often the same players. They had, when Matt Eberflus was here, they had the benefit of Shaquille Leonard, who was kind of a savant, and it wasn't really a blitz thing. It was like he almost turned a spy into a blitz, which is a really unique instinctual type of thing that I've never really seen anybody else do. It felt like, at least based on the first game, you had Kenny Moore gets a strip sack. You have Nick Cross obliterating Tua Tagovailoa. There was the pick that Latu got was on a pressure where it's a zone blitz, a simulated pressure where they actually only rushed 3, but they dropped both defensive ends, and Cameron McGrone came in. I just think it's going to be a lot of different things. They're going to make it harder to know. Feel for when to call those is probably more haphazard than we realize. But yeah, I just think that there's a little bit more of unpredictability to it, and that's probably going to help. Now, I will say this. One of the other things I thought coming away from Sunday is I want to see more from the defensive line in straight rushes, other than DeForest Buckner, because I've seen it from him before. Their sack that they got on a non-blitz was essentially Buckner created. Samson Ebukam just cleaned him up as he came up in the pocket. But
Buckner should have deserved at least half a sack on that, I thought. But
I think if you went for like created sacks and that stuff, Buckner probably has like 10 extra sacks over the course of his career based on what he's had here. So I want to see more of that. But yeah, I'm interested to find out what's going to happen with this defensive line going forward and whether or not they can get pressure. Tua Tagovailoa, they made him hitch a little bit more, but he's still at 2.64 seconds. That's still faster than more than half the quarterbacks in the league in terms of getting the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, I mean, Leatu Latu is the big question, obviously. Here is he a pass rusher, or how good of a pass rusher is he? Because
Right, he
he
had the
had
interception last week. He had the interception last week, but he didn't have a quarterback hit.
right.
Can he be the dominant down in, down out edge rusher that they absolutely need him to be? We don't know that yet.
Yeah, so Joel's saying he's playing out of position and he should be playing free safety. But and then you touched on this with Ward and the matchups, but Stewart and Buckner only played 27 snaps, so they didn't play a ton of snaps. Maybe that was because it was a blowout. But again, as you've written at IndyStar.com, it was pretty. There were a bunch of guys who played every snap previously under the previous defensive coordinators. We're going to see a lot of more players rotating in and out. I've actually never been a huge fan of that. I think you got to play your best players. But what do you think we're going to continue to see that? What are your thoughts on how they handled the first game?
Well, Buckner, I think, is actually at 69%, which is not that far behind where he normally is. I think he's normally an 80% guy, 80 to 75 if he's healthy. And so I think in a non-blowout, he's probably at where he normally is. You have to rotate the defensive line. Everybody kind of does. There's only like one guy. There's only a handful of guys who actually play, literally every snap on the defensive line. It's usually not a defensive tackle because they deal with more on the inside than the outside guys do. I think it's interesting, though, that in some positions where they previously did not rotate, that they are. Lawrence Central product Cam McGrone, who has not really played any defense, played the exact same amount of snaps as Joe Bacci. Anarumo said that's because they think, each guy does some stuff a little bit different. And like, if they had if they had gone out and gotten, like if they'd gotten Carson Schlesinger in the draft, if he hadn't gone when he did, I think maybe you probably don't do that. But since they don't have him, playing matchup football makes more sense to me than just putting it all on these guys who haven't really done it before. The same thing with using Blackman in a dime/speed role. Like, I was so worried last week about Xavier Howard. It didn't turn out to matter because Tua Tagovailoa had no idea what was going on with the Colts defense. But, they brought Blackman in and put him in these speed spots to go up against the Dolphins speed guys. That's stuff that they haven't done in the past. They usually just kind of play their five guys in the secondary and let them go. Now, those were previously other defensive coordinators. So being willing to play the matchups like that is a good idea.
All right, let's talk about Denver before we get out of here. Last year's game was obviously huge. Honestly, they win that game, they could easily have made the playoffs. Jonathan Taylor puts the ball down outside the end zone. That was obviously a huge play. Adonai Mitchell made a poor decision throwing the ball back on that double pass or whatever they were trying to do there. Where are you on Nix?
Anthony Richardson also was not good in that game.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. Where are you on Nix? What are your thoughts on him? Because he was not good on Sunday.
So I don't think the real battle is the Colts versus Knicks. The real battle is Lou Anarumo versus Sean Payton. And because these guys are similarly wired in that, all of the stuff we've said about the way Anarumo approaches defense. He looks at your weaknesses. He tries to find ways to attack them. He's a game plan type coach. He has stuff he does, but he's going to change it on a weekly basis to attack you. All of that stuff is also what makes Sean Payton very good. I covered him for 3 years and change in New Orleans. He's very, very good at finding little tells in an opposing defense and attacking those. I honestly think that's why Nix was successful last year. That might be because Nix was not good in the game that we saw. He was not good in the game you just referenced. He threw 3 interceptions early. And that's kind of the football he sounded like he played last week against the Titans. They played the Titans? Yeah, they played the
Titans. Yeah.
But yeah, to me, the real battle is it's Anarumo versus Payton and who reads the other one better. And then the flip side is maybe if Anarumo is just confusing enough that he's not confusing Sean Payton, but he is confusing Bo Nix looks bad again. I think Nix's hype is probably a little overblown at this point. Again, a lot of that might be influenced by the fact that I saw him look terrible last year, and it's hard to forget about that. But yeah, I think that Nick's hype as a difference making quarterback is really tied more towards, his coach not putting him in bad positions.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how people talk about Knicks, and it's almost exactly what you're saying, which is everybody talks about, Sean Payton will put him in great spots, and thus he'll become one of no one's talking about him as a top 5 quarterback, but he'll be a top 10 quarterback or something along those lines. And my thing is like, okay, I get what you're saying, and clearly Knicks was pretty good last year as the lower draft pick that a lot of people didn't particularly care about, or weren't as high on. I shouldn't say they didn't care about him. They weren't as high on him, some of the other quarterbacks last year. But as soon as you get behind, or as soon as something goes wrong, that's a problem when you have a quarterback like that. Now, again, not everyone's going to – there's only so many all-pro quarterbacks go around. So having Sean Payton and having a guy that he likes works. And Drew Brees went from – the first year of Drew Brees, I would have probably been saying the same things now that I say about Brees that I'm saying about Knicks. And Brees proved that he's an all-timer in addition to having to work with Payton. So I just find it really interesting. Again, could nothing go wrong, or could the Broncos have some things get rolling early, and so it doesn't matter? 100%. But if the Colts can, make a little noise early on, I think Knicks is a kind of guy that you can get to, and the Colts did last year.
Yeah, I'm concerned more about the Broncos running game. The Colts did give up 6.5 yards per carry last week. Some of that may have been they got up big and they're doing other stuff. I see Broncos fan for life in the comments. Yeah. Sean Payton's not a terrible offensive coach. I'm sorry. He's just not. He's just not. We're too far into it. We're too far into this to say Sean Payton's a terrible offensive coach. Right? We just can't. I'm not going to do that. But their run game, they have 2 different backs. They have Dobbins and Harvey. One of the things with the Bengals last year, the Bengals defense, was that they struggled against the run. I want to see it with the Colts. I want to see if the Colts can do it. There were, even early in the game, there were some pretty big holes in the middle of the line. And I'm interested to see what happens if they attack the run game more than the Dolphins did. I want to see if some of the stuff we saw because a lot of Anarumo's philosophy is based around confusing the quarterback. And I don't know if that's helpful against the run.
To me, part of what I think Broncos fan for life is talking about is that, obviously when you get behind, you throw the ball. When things are, and it's basically what I'm saying, when things are not on the path that you want to be going on as an offense, then you do have to throw the ball more. And I just don't think Nick's is that kind of guy. Now, I will agree that, again, I did not watch the game. I will agree that it was odd. It seems odd to me to have thrown the ball 40 times in that Titans game. Titans defense is probably pretty good, so maybe that's why they do it. They did feel more comfortable with that. So I don't know. It's interesting. I just think Nick's is a good, to bring up a favorite from our podcast. He's kind of an Alex Smith, which is a good quarterback, and nothing wrong with that. You can win a lot of games with him. I don't know if he's above that. He's going to be better than that. Maybe he will be. But I think that's sort of where he fits in, as opposed to being a superstar. And heck, if the Colts had Alex Smith the last several years, no one would be complaining about it. So, and do you think Jonathan Taylor cares that or I shouldn't say that. Obviously, he cares about the game last year. Do you think it'll have any impact on his game this year? Do you think he thinks about it? Does he, what's he going to say when he's asked about it tomorrow?
Number one, he's kind of said what he's going to say on it, which is it's inexcusable. He's not going to.
Right.
Deriving extra motivation from that, I think there's probably some of the stuff where you have rivalries with individual players and stuff where you get into a game and you're like, I really want to beat this team because of that. I don't know that he goes into this and says, I have to make up for that fumble against the Broncos. I really do think that some of that stuff is overblown. We put a lot of historical stuff on games, like the opener. We were asking them all last week, do you feel the pressure of all these openers that you've lost? And then a bunch of the players weren't there for them, Like, I do think that some of that stuff is a little overblown by us. Taylor, especially to me, seems more like a guy who looks forward than looks backward. And so I generally think that I don't necessarily think that I think maybe if he gets a breakaway run, he'll think I should hold on to this. But I think that's probably true. I think that's probably true in every game. It's not just because it's the Broncos.
Yeah, I've always thought that was a little weird, and that you're almost saying this one matters more. I mean, aren't you trying as hard as you can all the time? I mean, you don't reach that level without that. Again, I don't want to say that there isn't some emotional stuff in there. You made a good point about the opener and after Jim Irsay's death. Did you play harder? No, but would it hurt a little bit more if you lost it? I think that's fair. You know, does it hurt a little bit more when you lose to your rival? Sure, that does. Does it feel a little better when you win? So I think that's a fair point. But yeah, I would agree that. I mean, what can Jonathan Taylor do? He screwed up. Just don't screw up again like that, and that's really all you can ask anyone. So
well, and if it was, I think the thing is, if that mistake was created by the Broncos, then maybe it's the fact that they're playing them again has a little bit more, I don't know, oomph to it. But it wasn't created by the Broncos. Taylor blew that, like the mistake Taylor made, he could have made against any opponent. And so I think that's why I was saying, like, I think on any breakaway run, he should probably be tucking it tighter because of that Broncos game. Not because it's the Broncos, just because he learned in a very, very harsh way, don't drop the ball before you get to the goal line.
And he also should do the celebration I've long wanted to see on any kind of breakaway touchdown, which is, as long as no defenders are around you, run down to like the 1 or the half-yard line, stick the ball over into the end zone. As soon as you break the play and it's a touchdown, pull the ball back out, hand it to the ref. Never step foot in the end zone. You got a touchdown. I want to see someone do that. If you want to run the length of the end zone, I'd be okay with that too. I'd like to see that. Obviously, you're risking getting popped because maybe people won't realize what you're doing, but I think it'd be worth it to see it.
I think we haven't we seen a wide receiver do the run across the back of the end zone thing before?
I have not. Well, it'd be the front of the end zone. I've not seen that before. It might have happened because it's a magic thing. I think some people talk about having done that.
I think we've seen it. I think what happens in the NFL though is that these guys chasing are so fast
it's rare.
It's rare to be so far out there that you can do anything unless you're like Deion Sanders was faster than almost any other human, and so that changed stuff like when he was doing it. But if Darrell Green had been chasing him, can you really do that? Because you're probably going to get caught from behind.
Yeah, you got a bunch of guys out there, and there's angles and things like that. It would not be something that could happen often.
It's also interesting that it's hard for them to get to their full. It's hard for them to get to their full speed. Like Jonathan Taylor has said, he's been chasing 23 for a while. He's only been over 22 a couple of times. Like it's hard to get to your full speed when you're carrying a football and running.
And the last topic will be A.D. Mitchell. He had the poor decision on throwing the ball last year, but he looked good. He made 2 tough catches on Sunday. He has been, super high highs and super low lows. What are your thoughts? We got Greg Doyle wrote about him today. We'll have a column posting Thursday morning, so please check that out. But Joel, what are your thoughts on what we've seen in this preseason into the first game on Mitchell?
It was a good. Some of that stuff was a good sign. I think the thing that was biggest that was a good sign was the way he attacked the ball while it was in the air. I thought that was the thing that was missing last year from him, was sort of the urgency to go get the ball once it's in the air. Some of the other stuff, I think they minimized it by the fact that he only played like 15 snaps, like some of the mental stuff. But the 2 catches he made were, I'm going to go get this football. That's not necessarily what we saw from him last year. The other thing is, if he's not the focal point of the offense, some of that stuff gets lessened a little bit. So, it's a good early sign. But with this whole Colts team, and this sort of brings it full circle, with this entire Colts team, it's like, okay, it's happened for 1 week. What's next? Like with this entire Colts team, and especially the quarterback, especially Daniel Jones, we've seen one really, really great week. Impossible really to come up with a lot of negatives from the first week. Is it going to continue? I don't know. Like even some of the stuff I'm writing, like working on the Blitz story, like it could look really, really bad if Denver, if Vance Joseph has a better handle on Tony Sperano Jr. than Anthony Weaver did. So yeah, we're gonna find out stuff and about this team next week. And the thing is, I think even if they beat the Broncos, I think everyone's going to be kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, I will say if they beat the Broncos, I will give them more respect than I have so far. Certainly, they earned some respect last week. I'm not saying that, but anything can happen in one game, and they will earn the respect after another win. Please like and subscribe. This is the Colts Cover-2 podcast. We appreciate Rambo 25 and Broncos fan for life commenting. And
who hates Sean Payton?
And we will talk again next week.